Good evening. On behalf of Jonathan Ball Publishers and Graffiti Books, I'd like to welcome you to the online launch of Dr. Emmanuel Taban's book, The Boy Who Never Gave Up. Dr. Taban will chat to Hanlie Retief, and she's a well-known award-winning journalist and also the author of books like Bielefeld and more recently the Anton Goosen Liedjieboer. But before I hand you over to Dr. Taban and Hanlie, allow me a few moments. Jonathan Ball, the founder of Jonathan Ball Publishers, sadly passed away on Friday, the 2nd of April. Please spare a thought of comfort and condolences for Jonathan's family, his friends, and his colleagues. Also to Eugene Ashton, Annie Olivier, and all the staff at Jonathan Ball Publishers, our thoughts and prayers are with you. So, on a lighter note, I hope you're going to enjoy the evening with you. I'm so looking forward to a discussion on this book. Over to you, Hanlie and Dr. Taban. I'll speak to you later.
Thank you so much. It's wonderful to be here, and it's absolutely a privilege to see you again, Dr. Taban.
Thank you so much, Hanlie. What a pleasure being interviewed by you, and thanks actually for rolling the ball in July last year on the profile of my life story, and that was quite amazing and was groundbreaking, and thank you. And that's when media like carte blanche, actually they got it from you, and I really appreciate. I feel so much indebted for you, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Taban. You know, I've been doing interviews my whole life, but yours has touched my heart deeply. I think it was the most extraordinary interview that I've had. I've read your book now, and I enjoyed every minute of it. Your story is amazing and you are inspiring. So it's a privilege to be here tonight with you. And as you know, I have many questions always. So let me start with let's start with the book. I mean, how does it feel to have this in your hands? You must be so proud.
I think it's actually great. Not many people manage to write books in their lives. And I feel very honored to that, at least to have written one of my first books in my life. And I think for me, that's a legacy for myself and for my children. Hopefully one day my generation, 50, 100, 200 years from now, should be able to read it and get to see and hear where the father come from and the diversity that I went through and how it's actually possible that your past does not determine your future. Your future is always written for you. And you could become whoever you want to become, irrespective of where you come from, color, race, whatever, might not play a greater part in your success in life, as long as you work hard. And I think for me, that's very good for my future generation. And it's also a great thing to hear Africans' side of story of determination, perseverance, and hard work. And I think for me, that's what the book all speak about. I'm very grateful for that. Thank you.
It started, I mean, I smiled reading your book in the first chapter. This boy who started running. When you were born in that mud, you almost started running. Eh? You really couldn't stop. You always ran everywhere. And even now, you are impatient to get things done. But tell me about that first years, because there's also a line in the books that says they were happy years. Those first few years with your mother, in the south of Sudan, lock around the place, the village that you grew up?
I always enjoyed running in my life. I just, for whatever reason, I didn't find a need to waste time when I was actually very young. Whenever I get sent to the shop, I always run. That's always been my story of my life. And up to now, I still get impatient when I have to stand on the queue because I don't understand why people cannot do things faster. Why they cannot put effort on it. Why, that's always been my life. And I never thought one day it would probably carry me to where I am today. And I wonder if I was not running during my childhood, chances are good that I might not have been in South Africa by now. I could have given up a long time ago. So maybe running is a very good thing in life. It's quite a therapeutic for your soul. And also maybe make your mind very strong and determined. And my life in lock around, it was very good. I mean, I was a happy child at that time because that's all that I knew at that particular moment.
Mm-hmm. And also your mother, you wrote so beautifully about her. She was an extraordinary woman and she had so many hardships, but she got you to school, and she got you into the good school for your first few years that actually gave the foundation for you to move from further on. Tell me about her, and tell me about, and there's also a thing that the simplicity of that life. You were happy and nurtured by her. She was really the anchor in those years for you.
I think mothers are very important in every child development. You see, as a mother, when you have a child, you're stuck with that child. When you have 1 rand, means you divide 50%, 50 cents goes to that child, 50% for you. And you're kind of stuck on that. And it's a mother who, at the end of the day, kind of finding a way for their children, whether education, moral, and all those. The mother normally introduced us to that. And I think for me, that was the reality. And my mother, I mean, she was not perfect. She was like any other mother. You know, they're not faultless. She have a fair of her mistakes. But I think one of the biggest things for her was, of course, education, that she didn't get education. And that's probably the reason why we end suffering and she have doing limited for us. And that's why after today, I have that passion to make sure that if I have an opportunity and the money and the wealth in the world, I'll make sure that every child, every girl child is educated. Because when you educate a woman, you educate the rest of her generations. And I wish that my mother was educated because she could get the best out of me. But despite all her limitations, she was able to provide for me enough for me to survive to up to the certain point of my life until I become a teenager. And that was when I became a teenager and a man. And that's when, suppose my father was to take over that role for a teenager, but then he was not there. And that's when all my predicaments start.
Right. And also, I mean, she didn't hear about you for 9 years. I mean, 9 years, she thought, and she couldn't believe. Everybody told her you died. You're over. You're not there anymore. And she kept on believing that you're still alive. And then you made contact with her again. That must have been so wonderful.
I think all mothers have instincts. Yeah. And I think those instincts, that motherhood instincts, probably the one that tells her that I'm still alive. And those instincts, like every human being also got instincts. And throughout all my journey throughout Africa, I rely on instinct for me to survive. And I think because of those instincts and how motherhood instincts, she always knew that I was alive, I was somewhere, somehow still alive. And I think probably that was the best moment of her life, of course, when I communicated with her for the first time. And she was extremely very happy. And I just remember that she was maybe 60 kilos and she ballooned to 90 kilos. She was very happy out of blue. Really? I mean, she picked up a lot of weight. And of course, she became a health hazard. But for her, that means happiness for her. In Africa, if you are overweight, means you're happy. And that was for me. She always tell me, look, I'm pick up weight. I'm so happy since I hear your voice.
Oh, great. And the wonderful thing that you wrote about your grandmother, who also kept waiting for you. And then she said, I waited for you. Now I can die a happy woman. Isn't that beautiful?
I think that was for me was, it was great because I haven't seen her also for 9 to 10 years. And when she told me that, I remember she gave me this warm hug. I mean, she was staying in mud house. She grew up in mud house, live in mud house, and she died there. And I think for me, it was nice to see her, but also some kind of sadness grip into me, knowing where I've been to South Africa. I've seen the better part of the world and seeing where they were born and how they grew up until the time that they died. I was very sad. And that's what probably drive me more to work hard, want to do more for myself, to make sure that I could change the trajectory of the lifestyle for the children, future generations. And I think for me, that touched me quite a lot, especially always when I think about my grandmother. I wish she could have even a bit of life, even having new clothes, not wearing a second-hand clothes. And that for me is always very touching.
Yeah. And you also built a new house for your mother, and she died before she could move into that new house. There's a part, I think it's one of my favorite parts, or the most saddest parts in the book is when you flew back to South Sudan to her funeral, and you were so overcome with grief because, I mean, you couldn't give her that house. She couldn't be, but she actually thanked you for that house just before she died. She called you. So she had a sense of perhaps knowing that she's near her end.
Yeah, I think she knew about it. I think my biggest issue that was, of course, when that happens, was more feeling of guilt, because I wish that when I was supposed to be in medical school, I could have spent more time with her. I could have convinced her to come stay with me in South Africa. I could have done more. But I think in life, sometimes certain things are beyond our control. Yeah. I was trying to work as hard as possible and try to see whether I could make her life easier and maybe pay her back for all the suffering that I went through when I was very young. And I wasn't being I was a naughty child. So she, and for a child to disappear in mother life for 9 years, it's like a prison sentence for that woman. Right. Whether you're in South Africa or wherever it is, no matter how bad is your child, you always love your child. And I think for me, I wish I had that opportunity extra to tell her that I loved her and spend that time with her in ways she loved most. And I didn't have that opportunity. And that's what probably that I grieved so much during my trip back to South Sudan.
Wow. You were abducted in Juba and thrown into a jail. Were you the White House? Huh? That's what it's called.
White House.
That was bad. You were around 14, 15 years old at that stage?
Yes, I was 15. Yeah. And of course, when I was thrown in, I think, to be honest, after now, I don't know the particular reason why was that happens. And of course, based on the question that I was asked, was more really about the fact that maybe I was a spy. And whoever come with the idea that I was a spy, I wish I could actually find that person. But I ended really suffering in prison quite for 6 weeks, being tortured. And of course, the wise decision that I made was to convert to Islam. And that's what actually saved me. And that's when I found myself in the Gadari area, being in the Kalwa, learning to become a Muslim. At that particular moment, I thought it was the right decision. And I always I wanted to learn to the best of my ability.
And you became Nazir, but something made you decide that you want to be free. You don't want to be there. You're not going to stay there. And you escaped.
Yes, I think in life you will always know the fact that, I always get bored. And I always been running. And now I'm sitting in one place that you couldn't run, you couldn't go anywhere. You just have to read the same Quran and then do the same prayers. And that was not for me, because I was always been that active child. And I think that place didn't make me happy.
And then you escaped and you started walking. And that's where it started. What made you persevere, Dr. Taban? What made you walk out there and keep on walking through the night? Yeah. You wanted to go back to South Sudan, but then you got your directions wrong and it ended up in Eritrea. That is,
I think the issue that at that particular moment, I knew very well that if they captured me, they would probably have killed me. That was the reality. Sure. So I was running away to make sure that nobody finds me. And that's why I never went in the main road. I went through the bushes. And of course, the process of running through the bushes, that's when everything actually went wrong, And that's when, I remember that the first night I walked throughout the night, I never lie down, I never slept. Even I think it was for 4 or 5 days, I never lie down. I just walked sleeplessness and keep going until I saw my first lights. And I drank water from the puddles in the potholes on the street, because there was no other option. There was no water whatsoever it is there. But I think at that particular moment, I was a deep Christian child. And I always think that God or somehow universe was just directing me and making sure that I'm not getting sick, I'm not meeting animals, and I didn't have anything to slow me down. But you know what's the reality about Hanlie in life is that sometimes when you want to do something, somebody tells you how the things will not work, the dangers ahead of you. They give you all those warnings. And sometimes those warnings actually they discourage you. And most of us, we end not taking that journey. And that particular moment, there was nobody to question the wisdom of my journey. So it was all the decision. Everything was based on me. So I have to take the first step to the next step and try to reach my destination.
Sure. And then you were thrown into jail. thrown into jail again. I mean, the hardship of that, and not even having food in jail. How did you keep on? How did you weren't discouraged at all? I think it was in Nairobi, in Kenya, that you didn't have food for days, and another South Sudanese got food. Tell me about that.
I think that was very, because I got caught when I crossed the border illegally. Then I got thrown into prison. And then my money that I had was $75. The Kenyan police actually took the money. So I didn't have anything. And then I was in prison for 2 days. There was no food. And then, of course, one of the Sudanese guy who was a lawyer came, and then he chatted to me. He knew my mother. And whenever the Kenyans family brought a prisoner food, like that time is chapati in Kenya, and he will go and fight and grab some food. And sometimes I was very hesitant. I didn't want to accept the food that was, that results from a violent act. But then he told me, you know what? I think if that's the only option that you need to survive, then you have to fight for every small thing. And that's a reality sometimes. I mean, if you look at South Africa, where there's a lot of gap between rich and poor. I mean, imagine if you're poor out there, you have nothing. What happens? You might have to fight or steal to try to stay alive. And that's a reality. And at that moment, I didn't want to do that. But the lawyer actually fought for me and got me the food. And that was probably maybe give me something to survive that particular moment.
And you said something about dignity is a luxury you couldn't afford. Sure. What a sentence, But you actually kept your dignity. You never begged. Never, ever in this whole journey of 18 months, you never begged. You worked.
Well, Yeah, thank you. Begging on the street for me, it was not for me. I'd rather go to the organizations or go to UN offices and ask for help, because begging on the street, I mean, it's a lot of hard work. And I don't think that I have that. And we were not growing in the situation where we are beggars. So for me, I never did that at all throughout all of my journey. So I kept my dignity.
And there's a golden thread throughout your whole journey, and that's the Comboni priests. I mean, they kept you going right across Africa. And they helped you a bit. Well, not all of them, but most of them. That's amazing.
Yeah, look, I didn't. One of the beautiful thing about it, I think sometimes we tend to give up. We tend to paint everybody with the same brush. But the reality is that I think there are good people out there, as much as there are bad people out there. But in life, you must keep on looking for the good people, because one of them will become exceptional to the rule and help you out. So the fact that you get rejected in one corner, there's nothing preventing you to try again in the next corner. You must keep on trying, because you never know. At the end of the day, all the people that have succeeded in life, they have had some help from strangers. And I'm always very grateful that the Combonis were planted in my way to assist me throughout my journey.
And not being discouraged. You in Addis Ababa, you were on the streets, living on the streets. What made you decide not to stay on those streets and not stay there and become that? What drove you forward the whole time? Okay, you wanted to get to Nairobi, but what kept you going, Dr. Taban?
When I was on the street, there were a lot of other homeless people. But those homeless people, they seem like they have arrived. That's their destination. And for me, I was a child that was stranded, and I was still on journey. I was going somewhere. And the most important thing is that, at that particular moment, I have lost everything. But there was one thing that I haven't lost. Moving forward, I had so much to gain. And that's what keeping me going, that I would one day find something. And I did. That's why I'm here today.
Wow, beautiful. And there's also this one instance of the Coke bottle. You probably have told the story many times, but I need to hear it again.
Can you repeat again?
There's one story about the Coke bottle, that you read on the Coke bottle. I know you've told this story many times, but I need to hear this again.
The issue that I think since I was a child, I remember when I was even at St. Joseph Primary School, I always like reading. I always get this book like The Great Escape, and I used to read. And when I was in Nairobi, I bought a Coca-Cola can. And when I finished drinking, then I wanted to throw the can away. Then I decided I'm going to read and where it come from. And the can was made in South Africa. And somewhere that's stuck in my mind. And when my uncle told me that I have to go to refugee camp, and I just decided, you know what, I was going to go to South Africa. And that was an instant decision that I never thought of, but was born out of that Coca-Cola can. And that time, little did I know how far was South Africa. I didn't know anything about apartheid, neither I knew anything about Nelson Mandela. I just knew that I want to go as far as possible because I've been rejected 3 times by my loved ones.
That is a disillusionment. You're rejected by the loved ones. The only people that you kind of could depend on, you couldn't.
Yeah. Yes. And that's a reality about our life.
To decide that you only have yourself. You can only depend on yourself.
The issue that I think being an Africans, as I always say, there's difference between Africans and the Caucasians. As Caucasians, people were born as individual. People are more got individual way of thinking. You and yourself and your own happiness. In Africa, we are born in the community. You work you belong to the community or to society. So now, when a child in Africa, everybody that's related to become your relatives and you depend on them. And that particular moment, people that are supposed to be my distant or close relatives, I couldn't depend on them. And that was the point in my life. For whatever reason, I decided maybe I need to find my own identity. Maybe I need to go somewhere where nobody can, that I have no relatives. So I have to grill out my success, whether I'm going to work as a slave, whether I'm going to work as a domestic worker, whatever it is, I will do it to the best of my ability, as long as I can feed myself and get account for all my happiness and for who I want to be. And that was the moment that actually, that problem made me who I am, when I already decided that I have all myself. And at that particular moment means nobody can help me except me. And I probably will rely on the strangers, but going forward means I have to look after myself to survive.
And that was a defining moment in your life, as always, because it gave you the aggression almost, or not aggression, but strength and courage to keep on. The way that you came into Johannesburg always makes me smile, because you came in there and you saw all these tarred roads and it's like 4 lanes. You were like gobsmacked, and they dropped you off at I think it was Carlton Centre, and and you couldn't believe what you were seeing. Tell me about it a bit.
Amazing thing about Joburg is that when you arrive in Joburg from these small towns, first thing was you see the Commissioner Street. When you look, it never ends. It's just like you look right, left, it never ends. And then, of course, I saw this building. When you look up, you get dizzy, And when you see, you just thought like the buildings in Nairobi where there's always security guard. But in South Africa, there was no security guard that time. Everybody was allowed to enter in. And I remember I entered in and I was wearing my first English shirt and trousers. Then I thought, okay, maybe I need permission. So now when I went, I was very nervous. And I saw the escalator for the first time. And it was awesome. So I saw people jumping in and out. I said, okay, maybe I should try that. And
that's when going up and down.
Exactly. And that kind of made me happy. And then, of course, that's when I found myself get my place to sleep that particular night. Yes.
One night. And the next night, boom, bad news. No place to stay. Scary city. So you slept, and I always think of this, Ellis Park. I mean, if you drive there, you were sleeping there. I probably drove past you, you know? I mean, sleeping there and being very scared under a bridge. Wow.
Well, I slept there about two nights, and I think I dropped there a couple of times. I think for the last 2017 and 2018, I dropped there almost every day going to Wits University.
Really?
And every time when I pass from there, I become very emotional. And I end actually buying a lot of food parcels and give to them because there are a lot of other street children there. So I will give them food parcels because I don't want to give them money. I know that most of them could have been on the drugs and that. So I'll always do that. And I always would be very emotional because I remember my humble beginning that those places, it might look like under flyers, but it was the first 2 days that actually I spent my night. And this always remind me not to feel comfortable because the rocks were not friendly to me either at that particular moment.
Wow. Wow. And then there were the steps, I think, at the Catholic Church that you were sitting there and they didn't want to help you. And I think it was the last 20 Rand that you had, or 10 Rand or something, that you tried to tell us that story. And then the moment when that, I think the Mazda 323 came with this guy, this Italian priest, and he changed your life.
I think when I had my first 10 Rand, I remember I went to Joburg Central and I asked one of these lady, I need to call the Combonis, then give her 10 Rand.
Yeah.
And it was a paid phone. So I ended speaking to 25 Rand. And the lady didn't tell me, of course, that you exceeded 10 Rand. I think she assumed that I had the money. And when I dropped the phone, I was frustrated because I've been rejected again. So when I want to walk away, and then she told me, sorry, you have spent 25 Rand. I said, but I don't have 15 Rand. Then she said, no, I'm going to call the police. And I said, no ways, I'm not going to be in prisons again. And that's when I break down and crying like uncontrollably so. And she felt sorry for me. And after that moment, when she let me go, I went to the Combonis, to the cathedral again. And I told the priest, you know what, it's fine if you guys can help me, but at least let me sleep on the stairs for 1 or 2 days until I get a job and be able to look after myself. Because under the bridge, people were fighting. Those street people were fighting over something or nothing at all, you know. So I didn't, and they were afraid they didn't come to my side. So I was just hoping they might come to my side, then we end fighting and I could have been killed there. And I didn't want to go back there. And that, I think that persistence, that resiliency, I think probably was the moment when they called the Combonis, and that's when Bishop Sandra actually come to pick me up. And that Mazda 323 today, when I look at it, for me, it's always a lucky charm. And when it took me, and that was the first time probably, the end of my misery and the beginning of my ascending in my life.
Wow, that changed everything. They became like a family to you. But
Yes.
You were not happy to keep on doing garden work. No. You said you want to do Matric. And everybody laughed at you because you didn't have 5 years of schooling. But you said, no, I can do Matric. And the best part for me, Dr. Taban, is you looked at the maths book of grade 11 or standard 9, or standard 8, and said, no, I can do all this. Put me in grade 11 or standard 9, I'll be able to handle it. And you could. That is amazing. So they helped you through it. Just go tell me about this a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that I always say to people out there. Never ever write off a child. You can write out a 65-year-old or 70-year-old man. That's a different story. But a child, whether they're wearing shoes or not, whether they're walking naked or not, never write that child off because he might surprise you. And that was my life story, because people think that I could not become anything. Yes, I did try to do gardening. I did it properly, not just did have job. Properly was good, and the extra thought I could become a good gardener. And I actually did work also in the building construction, where I remember work for a day where I have to carry sand to the second floor on my head.
Sure.
I didn't run away. I did it to the best of my ability, and I got paid my 50 Rand. I was tired, then I said, no, I think my brain is better. I can use it better. And that's when I asked the Combonis. And when I told them, show me the book, and I will show you. And, but to their credit, they given me opportunity to show me the book, and that's when they took me to school. And when I saw the book, and I said I could do it, but you know what? It was difficult. I have to spend some time up to midnight, try to practice each and every day, did 14 to 16 hours every day, never slept. Saturday and Sunday, I work extremely hard to overcome those things. So for me, I'm still wondering whether people actually need to do 12 years of school, because you could actually, 5-6 years, you could actually do much. That's the reality.
Not waste time and not waste time. True. And then, I mean, you got 53 in and you even learned Afrikaans. You took that as a second language. Oh, goodness gracious.
Well, I knew that Afrikaans was a language that is very good for business and is good for, Afrikaans I think was easy to write, but difficult to speak. So I could write, but I couldn't speak. And that was for me, was the best. I need something that I could write. And then I couldn't, like Zulu was difficult. I couldn't speak, I couldn't write. So for me, Afrikaans was a very good language.
Yeah. And then you got 53 and thought you'll go to university with that. And then the funny thing is you got through and they said, no, you can't do engineering with that. At Wits it was, huh? And then you went to the Technicon to do it there. And they said, you ask, but which is better, the degree or the certificate? No, the degree. And then tell.
Yeah, so when I passed my Matric, I think it was 57%. It was actually good marks.
57.
Okay, sorry. Until I went because it was a Matric pass,
Yes.
So when I went to Wits University, it does say I couldn't do maths or engineering. That's when I went to previous Wits Technicon. And they told me, no, I could do electrical engineering. So I said, wow, that's so awesome. Then I said, but why the difference? Because I could also be in Wits University. They said, no, your marks is too low for that. That's when I knew that I wasn't good enough. That's why I couldn't go to Wits. I'm not saying that people of Technicons are not good enough, but I just feel that my strength didn't lie on technical skill, and I didn't think that I've given enough time to actually do Matric properly. And that's when I decided I'm going to repeat Matric. And you know what? There's one of the important things that I want to just let the listeners learn out there, that when I went to JP High School for Boys, and I asked the deputy headmaster, who was Mr. Rose, and he looks at me, and they have a rules at school. One was that they don't take people that are repeating Matric. Secondly, they don't take foreigners. Thirdly, they don't take anybody more than age of 18 years old. Means you have to come from standard 7 to 8. And for whatever reason, I spoke to him last week for the first time, he actually decided not to ask the headmaster about me joining the school. So he just asked me, come with your books. So then I went to A class, and because that particular moment, we are about 2 black students in the A class, the rest were whites. And then the rest of the white students, they were rebelling. The fact that why I was allowed to actually come to A class with no academic colors, because everybody there was wearing white colors. And of course, then he had to tell to the headmaster, and he think he was going to lose his job. And because the white parents were very powerful, and then he decided to actually, and then the headmaster said, we'll give him scholarship, let him study. And then he actually called an assembly, and then he said he was going to award me a headmaster special award.
Fantastic.
And that's when he decided to tell my life story to the rest of the students. Why did I actually find myself in that predicament? And of course, when they wanted me to speak, actually, and I heard about it, and I decided not to go to school that evening because I was very ashamed of my past. And then, of course, they given me an award prize, and then my colleagues in the student, they actually become nice to me because after when they hear my life story. And 2 weeks ago, actually, I met the headmaster again, and he given me the award again.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, so
you received it this time. You were not ashamed anymore. Wonderful.
Not anymore.
Wow, beautiful. You know, the part of the book that I didn't really know was your medic when you studied medicine, how difficult it was for you. I mean, when the bursary was taken away from you in your second year, you didn't have food. I mean, you even passed out during ward rounds. That must have been really, really difficult to study so hard and not knowing where money comes from for books or food. That I didn't realize that it was so difficult for you, you know, that you really struggled to get that degree.
Yeah, you see, it was very difficult because the books, there's always book in library. So you could always use them to read. So the knowledge were available. The issue was just daily expense like food. So I didn't have enough money because at that particular moment, Bishop Sander left to Italy, and the scholarship that I have, which was from Japanese Voluntarily Center, was discontinued. And then, of course, when Bishop left, there was a new priest who came, and he didn't wanted me in the house either. So everything just went like into from better to worse. I was completely on the floor. And that particular moment, I have two options. One was to give up. But if I give up, I have nothing. Means I was going nowhere. So the life that I had at that particular moment, at least at the university, I have a place to stay. Now, if I give up, imagine, I was going to go on the street with no place to stay because I have nowhere to go. So the best was to grill it out at the school.
Wow.
And that's when I decided I abandoned all my friends and spend the time to study, have 1 meal in the evening, and focus on my academic work. Yes, I passed out twice, but then or there I got up and still going. But that particular year was one of my best years that actually have the top marks in that particular year.
Wow, congratulations. And you didn't stop there. Internal medicine was the next step. And then after that, pulmonology. Why?
I think because I knew quite a few things. One of those that the best thing in life is not money, it's his skills. If you have a skills, you will succeed. If you got no skills and you have money, you will struggle. Because if that money finish, you won't be able to work and get another one. So for me, was that I need to get a skill that is indispensable. And that's why I went to internal medicine. When we finished internal medicine, my biggest concern was that there were a lot of physicians in the country. Though I have a hospital, that where I went to hypoxemic clinic, there were two of us physicians. But what I figured out that in all of Mpumalanga, there was no pulmonologist. There were only about 80 pulmonologists in the country that time. So I said, but I could be one of them. If I could become number 81, let it be so. And that's when I left internal medicine, because it was not all about money, because I had enough money by that particular moment. And I said, no, it was not about money. I'd rather get myself a better skill as a pulmonologist where there's a demand for that. So at least I cannot be displaced easily, because I knew very well that there are always new physicians coming up. So I don't want to find myself in the pool or in the crowd and get lost. So I need to make sure that whatever skills I have is indispensable. Then, of course, that's when I did pulmonology. But even when after finishing pulmonology, I also didn't rest there. I actually went and did quite a bit of more academic. I did a bit of sleep study. And I also, and I was busy with my master's in interventional pulmonology in Denmark and Germany. And because I always want to be the top, I want to be the answers in pulmonology. And I also don't want it one day to become jobless, because I've been jobless for the rest of my life. I don't want to find my children on the street. I want to have a degree that I will perfect it, and a skill that nobody can take that away from me.
Wow. That was a decision that you took actually as a small boy when you saw your brother being born in the mud hut, and you decided no child of mine will land with his head on the mud floor in his first moment of his life. You know, that's quite yeah. And you know, the wonderful thing, you called me last year and told me about your discovery with COVID-19. I mean, it was groundbreaking, and yeah, you were so excited because you told me, I'm not going to lose my patience. That was your sentence to me. I'm not going to lose my patience. I'm going to make a plan with him, and you did.
Yeah, I think in life, you see, when you're so passionate in your work, like the way Hanlie Retief is, you will end seeing things that a lot of people don't see. And I think for me, I had an option of following every professor in this country and listening to what they say. But sometimes, as a pulmonologist, you sometimes also need to start using the skill that you have and make the best out of it, and also pioneer certain kind of treatment, because there's no point to be wasting for literature from Europe, China, and everywhere. We're looking for literature to come from overseas, but people in the UK, they're also looking for literature to come from overseas. So if you're in England, in South Africa, we are overseas to them. So why can't we be equal? Why can't we give them also information? Why do you have to wait information from them? And that's always one thing puzzling me. And the second thing is that I mentioned in my book that Africans, when you go to Europe, you write the same exams. We're not inferior to Europeans. That's the reality. Whether Chinese, whether Indians, we're not inferior to them. But the question why we cannot manifest the same kind of finding here. Why can't we be best like the Europeans or the Chinese? Why can't we be that? And the issue that always bothered me up to today, because I'm not the first doctor in Africa. There are a lot of doctors that has come throughout the generation to generation, but many were not that great either. The question's why, and that's always puzzled me. And I think when COVID-19 came, I just thought it was a good opportunity for me to also, since nobody know much about it, I can as well throw my head my head on the head and try to see whether I could also contribute in the treatment and management of COVID-19 patients. And in that particular moment, bronchoscopy was not part of the options. I was reviewing a lot of drugs because I want to find that treatment that worked for COVID. Little did I know that it was actual bronchoscopy that will help me contribute to the management of COVID-19 patients. So I'm very proud of it. Yes.
And you also had, and amazingly, you did a course or a seminar or something overseas just a year beforehand. So it all worked together and you could do this. Isn't that amazing? Yeah.
I think it was amazing. The one thing that I would like to tell to the listeners here, everybody sometimes, if you're in South Africa, there's so many issues with the race issue, black against whites and something like that. And I think people are just focusing their energy at the wrong kind of problems. And when I was in South Africa, I could able to get skills in Europe, Denmark, Germany, Netherlands, and I couldn't speak the language, but people were so helpful. So I don't understand why people cannot, if you think that you're an engineer, you're not getting what you want in South Africa, why can't you go overseas and get it and bring it back home? Even within South Africa, there's skills within certain group of people that you could actually learn from them. So for me, knowledge is a key. So you have to be hungry for the knowledge and you have to educate yourself. And if you're passionate enough about what you're supposed to do, then success will come to your way. You don't need to have money, because money will follow passion. And one of my professor always tell us that if you want to be a good doctor, buy an expensive textbook. If you buy expensive car, you're more likely to lose your car because your patient won't like you. But if you buy expensive book, the patient will like you and you're more likely to buy a better car. And I agree with him.
Totally. There are two diseases that you don't like at all. The one is victimhood. Victimhood is a very bad word for you. You don't like victimhood, and you have a problem with that. People shouldn't see themselves as victims, even as well as in South Sudan, where you grew up. And when you went back there, you saw that. Tell me a little bit about your thoughts about victimhood.
Hanlie Retief, the biggest problem in Africa is that we like to play a victim role. The problem is that when you're a victim, you're basically saying that there's absolutely nothing you can do because you are not in control of your destiny. someone else in control of your destiny. Why should I get up and work if at the end of the day, someone controls my destiny? The thing is that when you become victim, you become helpless. And when you become helpless, you start learning that there's nothing you can do. And that's not true. And the moment that you start believing in victimhood mentality, you are unlikely to progress. Success is a state of your mindset and depends how you program your mindset. If you're programmed in the term of victimhood, chances are good that you will not progress, you will not pass exams, you cannot even succeed in your work, and all that. And that's, for me, I discovered that throughout my childhood, that I would not blame my uncle for my problem.
Or your father for deserting
or my father for it. Because he made that decisions and he has moved. So why should I blame for it? Because at the end of the day, he have not taken my intelligence out of it. He have not taken my dignity out of it. So I still got everything for me to fight and become who I want to be. And I really wanted people in this country and Africa at large to free themselves from victimhood mentality and focus on the bigger picture. They need to ask themselves, why am I not successful? Why am I not passing? Have I tried hard enough? Have I studied 24 hours, 27? Have I worked hard enough? Because there's nobody out there who come out every morning to make somebody else's life hell. There's nobody out there for that. We ourselves, we condition ourselves to become victims. And you know what? The sad reality that when you condition yourself to be a victim, you go to shopping mall, you end seeing that everybody's against you. Whatever you do, you end seeing things that are not right. But if you're a free person like the way I am, wherever you go, you see things that are so amazing. You know, because at the end of the day, I could only answer for myself, not to my neighbor, not to somebody else. And that's why I'm a free person. I don't hate anyone. And for me, is that I will never be victim, no matter what the circumstance is. Because if I was victim, I won't be here today.
You know, you have 4 daughters now and a lovely wife. You're a happy person. There's one sentence, and that's the last sentence in your book. You're right. I wonder if I will ever be completely satisfied. Dr. Taban, you're still running. You're running towards many new things and many things. It can't be more wonderful. When will you ever be satisfied? Never. What lies ahead of you?
I think my issue that I really love Africa. Africa is a beautiful. Initially, I asked one of the priests to always ask, why are the black people poorer than white people in Africa? In Europe, white people are having good lives. Black people, we're struggling. We live madhouse, poverty, corruption, nepotism, and all those things. Why would it God extra created that? And as I grow older and everything, I get to know that, in fact, it's not the God who created us that way. If you look at Africa, you look at Cape Town, you look at Garden Route, you look at Kruger National Park, you can't find this in Europe. You only find it in South Africa, in Africa. What does that mean? It means God loves Africans, and that's why He's given us a beautiful continent. But it's our duty as Africans. We need to work hard and develop it. And we have to have a good leadership to make the better out of this continent. And that's say that means as African, we have to focus on our children's education. But the problem that in Africa, everything being stolen, everything corruption is a major problem. We don't have a proper leadership. Every time we are preoccupied about racism, instead of focusing on issue at hand, at the diversity and everything. Imagine South Africa is better off. Imagine if you're in South Sudan, where there is no white people, who do you blame there for? Because everybody is there poorer. And despite having a lot of resources, it's just because we don't have structure. We don't have leadership. So I think Africans, we need to focus at our own problems, South Africa, to see why we're not prospering instead of focusing on the white race or on other people that are doing well. We should be learning from the other race to see how did the Chinese manage to develop their own economy, the Koreans, the Americans, the Europeans, or even the Afrikaners in South Africa. Why can't we mesh them? I think for me, that's a question that we should be answering. Yes, it's a very sensitive issue, but sooner or later, we need to start questioning and asking, why are we being left behind? Despite us having a good knowledge, we can become pulmonology, we can become engineers, we can become everything. Why can't we be those? And that, I think for me, I would always say that the problem is with us. Until we start admitting our failures, our problems, Africa will never develop until we take responsibility for our failures. And that failures must start with our leadership, our parents, our mothers, our brothers, to just admit that they have not done enough for that African child before we blame other people.
Wow, thank you. Thank you so much. It was wonderful talking to you as always, Dr. Taban. Enjoy your children, enjoy your life, and I can't wait to see the next chapter of the next book in your life. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. This was the most inspirational talk I've heard in a long, long time. And thank you so much for sharing that with us. As I said, I will let you know when we're running out of time, but I just lost complete track of the time as well. Dr. Taban, so thank you for this. And remember, The Boy Who Never Gave Up is available online at graffitibooks.co.za. And if you order within the next week, we'll give you 20% discount. And the first 25 copies that we get an order for will receive a signed copy by Dr. Taban. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Thank you, Hanlie, for your preparation. It's always a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you too.
And Dr. Taban, I think all of us learned something from you tonight. Good luck with your book, and I'm so looking forward to the next one. And thank you for agreeing to talk to us. Thank you so much, and good night.
And thank you very much, and good night. Thanks, Hanlie.
Thank you, Dr. Taban. Bye.